Hey everybody, Casey here with Life Abstract Gaming, and this week I've got a pretty interesting discussion. What are some sounds in video games that aren't just good, but make you feel good? Let's talk about video game ASMR. If you're not familiar with ASMR or Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response, you're not alone. I've only fairly recently been introduced to the concept, but you've likely experienced the sensation at some point before in your life. Essentially, it's described as a sort of tingling feeling denoted as pleasurable to the individual that's brought about due to certain kinds of sounds.
What kind of tingles?
See? It tingles.
The best example I can think of for myself was the noise an old CRTV would make when turning on after a while of being off. It was sort of a click followed by a very high-pitched but low-volume whining. Without being in the room with one, it might be really hard to replicate the effect from just the recording. But more recently, I found this video of a panda eating bamboo, and I just couldn't stop watching it, or more accurately, couldn't stop listening to it. So, like all things, I thought to myself, how does this apply to video games? I've come up with a couple examples of noises and sound effects related to games that I get a sense of satisfaction from hearing. I'd like to think that you guys will see what I'm talking about, but stuff like this is subjective, so some of them might be misses for you, but please let me know which ones you agreed with or didn't down in the comments. I'll start with some really well-known sound effects. Brick destruction in Super Mario World. When Mario does a spin jump on breakable blocks in Super Mario World, it drills through the block and makes this sound. It's really hard to try and describe what it is about this sound, but my best guess is the sort of rumbly crunch that's present. And I think you'll find that that's going to be a running theme for most of the others that I have listed. Sonic's rings. The golden collectibles from the Sonic series are probably one of the most iconic sounds in gaming. I'm not actually a fan of the Sonic games, but I can't deny the joy of that ring sound. It's at its best when Sonic quickly picks up a bunch in a row, and especially when he gets hit and they all go flying. It's possible that the iconic nature of this sound could be mistaken for the ASMR sensation, but like I said before, I don't actually really like Sonic, with the exception of Sonic Adventure 2, so I stand by the idea that the sound effect is just enjoyable, and I'm not tapping into a sense of nostalgia for it. Sonic's Spin Dash. When the Blue Hedgehog needs an extra burst of speed, he can curl up into a ball and spin to charge up while stationary. That low volume, high-pitched winding sound is kind of similar to the CRTV noise I mentioned, but it's far more pronounced here. The charged shot from Mega Man X. In the Mega Man X series, Mega Man not only fires his trademark yellow lemons, but if you hold the fire button, he starts to glow and you hear a reverbing tone that starts at a really low pitch before rising to a high one just before he fires off a powered up charge shot that sounds like a staticky surge. I love the entirety of this sound effect from start to finish. It's something that's played in my head since I was a kid and I never get tired of it. Player movement in the game Brink. Brink is probably not a well-known first-person shooter. It came out on last-generation hardware in 2011 and didn't live up to the hype it generated for having really interesting and innovative ideas showcased before its release. Despite all that, I never forgot the sound of the character just moving around in an early reveal of the game, detailing their smart movement system. It was such a pronounced and crunchy noise that I later found tends to exist in a lot of other military-style shooters, but in this demo it was prevalent. I don't even know if it ended up sounding that way in the final game, but it definitely left an impact on me, which brings me to my last example. Running in Metal Gear Solid 5. For some reason, the sound effect for Big Boss sprinting at full speed is incredibly dramatic. My guess is it's to emphasize that you're being loud enough to be heard by enemies, but the game world is so large that you do end up doing it quite a bit, so it's a good thing that it has that crunchy sound I've been mentioning this entire time. It's the same military shooter sound that's associated with having a bunch of gear on you, but there's also hints of what sounds like squeaking and air whooshing in the way you'd hear if you yourself were running around outside. It's an amazingly satisfying sound effect that I initially thought was obnoxious, but hey, maybe you still think it is. I know a ton of thought goes into video game sound design. Creators look for the best possible ways to convey meaning or information to players, and sound is crucial to that task. Games that trigger the ASMR effect in its players are testaments to developers absolutely nailing their sound design. So, what do you think of my video game ASMR examples? Did any of them make you feel good? Do you have any examples of your own to share? Let us know. We're listening.